It's real, ladies and gentlemen. They are here, the stars of SRX, Indy 500 champions, NASCAR champions, IMSA road racing champions.
The guy that short trackers all across America are pulling for tonight, Doug Coby.
My first thought was I wanted to be a part of it. It was a new idea, and it's all about the short tracks, all about promoting places like Stafford to the rest of America, and you know, who the hell wouldn't want to be a part of that? I knew when Ray revealed this idea that I wanted to find a way into the show. He sent me a text and he said, you know, hey, do you got a few minutes to talk about SRX? And I said, of course I do, give me a call now. You know, you may have heard that we're trying to include some, you know, local guys in with the superstars, and we want you to be the guy at Stafford. So took me all of a half a second to say, of course. You know, the whole concept of highlighting the short tracks on CBS to get superstars here to pack the grandstands and sell out all the food and all the merchandise. I mean, that's a huge shot in the arm to, you know, what are basically family-run businesses, and to have, you know, a family-run business like Stafford Speedway with the Arute family showcased on CBS live national television, that's a bigger deal than I think we realize. You know, there's a bunch of RVs set up, and some of them were personal RVs, like Michael Waltrip had his RV here. And then they had some Camping World RVs for the drivers, kind of like as a driver's lounge. My RV was Tony Stewart, Tony Kanaan, Paul Tracy, and Greg Biffle. And I'm like, you know, hey, I'm sharing an RV with you guys, like, nice to meet you, you know? And it was like, that's a quick way to get introduced to some guys who are legends of motorsports, really genuinely interested in me and my racing background and the Speedway, and, you know, really cool group of people just here to have fun and promote short track racing and win the race, really. Yeah, well, the best thing about it was I could actually be honest with them and tell them what they had to do, fully knowing that they probably wouldn't be able to do it because you need a feel for this speedway. So I wasn't hiding anything from them. I was telling them where I use the apron to turn the car, where the bump down into turn 3 is, and what it can make the car do. You know, told them that at Stafford, if you want to be fast, you have to get off the corner. Like, I was literally like teaching these superstars how to get around the speedway. And the thing everybody has to remember about that first race was none of us knew, not even Ray knew, how the cars were going to handle, how the race was going to unfold, how the tires were going to wear. None of us knew that. The guys probably only got about 15 to 20 laps of practice around this place, and here I'm thinking I got 10,000 laps around this place in, you know, 5 or 6 different types of cars.
Gonna be a couple of more laps before we get at it here.
In front of this capacity crowd in attendance here from the Stafford Motor Speedway.
Just kind of coming through what's normally the weekly pit area through this sea of, you know, people and barricades and tents set up and merchandise set up. I mean, it would look like a carnival over there with food trucks and all sorts of cool stuff. So that kind of is what started it and made me realize, you know, there's a lot of people here, you know. Bill Elliott got, I think, the biggest cheer from the grandstand because, you know, he means something to these people that came. I think most of the people that came to this event might not even be like your typical Friday night Stafford crowd. You know, they were coming from all over the Northeast to get a chance to see these drivers all together in one place, yell to their favorite driver and have the driver respond to them. Like, that's a thrill. So the fans were unreal that night. It shows the viewers on CBS that, you know, not only should they be watching it, but the people wanted to see it in person too.
Fans are loving it. Off turn number 4, history in the making from the Stafford Motor Speedway, and immediately up on the wheel is Biffle. As Biffle guards the inside of the racetrack, Labonte is there on the outside down the back straightaway. Doug Coby is battling with Tony Stewart, and that is for the 6th and 7th position.
This is going to be a lot more difficult than I thought. We had to run the same tires in both heat races, they're timed 15 minutes. You know, 15 minutes with no cautions, do the math. You're putting a lot of laps on the tires. So here I am thinking like, okay.
But there is the checkered flag in the air, and Biffle will take down the win. Labonte for second.
The way that the heat race worked was you invert your finish from the first heat to start the second heat. So I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to sandbag and finish in the back. I'm going to see what the car wants to do and try to get a baseline for what I want to adjust for the feature. Because remember, we can make adjustments after the heat race. So I needed to know what the car was going to do. I just didn't want to push it too hard. So the first heat, you know, I ended up, I think, finishing 6th or 7th, which put me with the invert right around 6th or 7th to start the second heat. Every car that you pass means that you start significantly further up in the feature based on how they, you know, typically make their lineups. And so I knew in that heat race that I would rather pass these guys in the heat race when it didn't mean too much than the feature when maybe it did. So my goal was to win the second heat race or get as far to the front as I could, even if I had to use up a little more than I planned to use. I thought it was kind of worth the bet to do that.
Trouble now. And what a great job by Doug Coby.
Willie T kind of lost it going into turn 3, spun around. I restarted 3rd. I got a terrible restart. There was a huge gap. Paul Tracy gets down in front of me, and I'm like, here, you know, I saw how he was racing everybody. He didn't have his reputation of being aggressive at that point. And, you know, it was only the second heat race of the season. And Michael Waltrip had kind of checked out, but then I kind of used my typical modified line here and just closed in on him in like a lap. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm closing in on him fast.
And Coby goes to the outside, and the fans are loving it here at Stafford. Off the turn, back to the stripe. Waltrip is still in command, but Coby becomes the leader by a nose.
Doug Coby to the outside, Michael Waltrip to the bottom, side by side, and the white flag this time for the starter stand as Coby goes to the head of the class.
The checkered flag is out, and Doug Coby has done it back on home turf here at Stafford.
That was a cool experience because I think it was a good side-by-side battle for a lap or so that the fans got to see, and then boom, the heat race ended. So I thought that me winning that second heat race kind of maybe built up some of the excitement for the start of the feature.
So far, so good, I guess. You know, we're going to start up front here in the feature, and track position is going to be everything. So I wanted to use up a little bit of the car just to make sure I could start up front and hopefully dictate the race and the pace of the 100 laps.
I mean, I knew at that point that as long as I conserved tires and managed the race, that I should, in theory, stay up front for most of the time. As the race went on, if I still had a good car under me, I was planning on making it awfully difficult for anybody to get by me.
Sold out crowd on their feet as we go under the green flag. Doug Coby, the modified champion, leads the field at turn number 2, and here comes Tony Stewart up to the second spot.
Back up front, Waltrip gets sideways and literally tags the wall with the back end of the number 15 machine.
You know, in the beginning of the race, it was more so just feeling the car out and seeing how's this thing going to go? Is it going to make it 100 laps? You know, how are these tires going to be? How are these guys going to race? How aggressive do they want to get? And I learned pretty quickly how aggressive Marco wanted to get.
3 wide for the lead. Marco Andretti to the bottom of both Stewart and Coby. Here comes Biffle to the inside of Stewart for second.
It was huge. And we see that every week here at Stafford. I mean, nobody should be surprised, but I watch the replay every time, and he got into my door pretty good and got into my left front tire pretty good. I could have had a tire go down, and that could have changed my whole race. I think it showed that these guys were going to figure out how to make the cars work, and even if I wanted to conserve and knew how to conserve the tires, it doesn't mean that the guys behind me are going to. No spotters, nobody telling them, take it easy, it's a long race. So they all got to race however they wanted to race. I basically decided I wasn't going to let these guys dictate how my race went. And from there, I kind of took control back and laid down the law.
Doug Coby going 1-2 over Tony Stewart, who is a distant third. Here's the challenge, back straightaway, battle for the lead.
Bottom shot move, Doug Coby doing it in fine fashion and modified style.
Biffle drove from the back. Of course, anytime you see a car go from last to first, you just think, well, that's the best car. And then Tony was right there the whole time, you know, and it's like, okay, so you got Tony Stewart kind of restarting behind you every time. You know, he's certainly capable of managing his race and doing what he wants. So then it kind of became like a cat and mouse game of who's really saving as much as they can for the last, you know, third of the race.
The local hero, Doug Coby, 10 laps away from maybe one of the biggest wins of his career. Marco Andretti slow and off the pace and a tire down.
And there is our caution with 7 laps remaining.
What's going through my mind is this is the story of my life at Stafford Speedway. From me racing here from 1997 and count how many times I've had a straightaway lead and then a caution comes out and I have to figure out how the hell I'm gonna win the race with, you know, a green, white checker, 5 laps to go or something like that. And it's a little bit more pressure when you look at who you're racing against and you look at the fans in the stands. And I didn't want to be the local guy that led the whole race, led by a straightaway, and then blew the last restart.
2 laps to settle it as we get the green flag. Doug Coby will lead the field to turn 1. Biffle, Tony Stewart, a challenge for second.
I just knew that I had to go as hard as I could, and if I tried to play it safe and if I tried to roll out of the gas early, that one of them might not and might use me to, you know, kind of as their barrier to get into the corner. So to be clear by 1 or 2 and really not even have to worry about somebody getting to me, rolling off a turn 4 to the finish, you know, it was kind of like kind of a big deal.
What a dream come true. These fans are going to go bananas. Their local track hero is going to beat the superstars tonight. Doug Coby wins at Stafford.
Relief, excitement, to be able to be the first one forever to have won SRX, seeing where it's going, seeing the popularity. It'll be a trivia question someday that I'm sure nobody will remember. But at the same time, for me and my family and my friends, you know, it's such a big deal for the track.
It's a Doug Coby kind of night here at the Stafford Motor Speedway, leading 80 of the 100 laps en route to the win, his 31st checkered flag.
So the cars have trap doors. The body is the trap door on the car, so it's very, it's kind of flimsy. The solid part of the chassis lies when the trap door is open. Well, the trap door isn't meant to hold 175 pounds of driver, okay? Not only that, but if you look at the in-car camera, you can see clearly that they placed the checkered flag on the door, and I did not grab it with my hand as I was getting out. I stepped on it, and I slipped and fell. You know, I took a minute to myself, crouched down on the ground. I think I covered my eyes and said, what just happened? This is on CBS, just a reminder, this isn't local, you know, racing here. This isn't even on like CBS SN, this is on CBS, the real CBS. And then I just said, you know what, you won the damn race, so you just get back up and you get on the roof and you celebrate.
10,000 people just love to see him come across the start-finish line as the winner. Great job.
I think that was like a bigger moment of triumph than actually winning the race. Luckily, you guys didn't have this massive screen on the infield because I'm sure that would have been replayed over and over and over again. But it's all good. It's part of the deal. It's part of the day. I think as many people as they can remember me for falling on my ass when I won the race, but I still won the damn race.
What a special night for short track racing in America. This is a special night for Stafford Motor Speedway and everybody who's a short track racer around the country, whether you're dirt or asphalt. To have these guys here, this amazing crowd at Stafford, I really want to thank Ray and everybody at SRX and World.
We were all in it together, and the crowd knew how important it was that I won that race, and I appreciate that they knew how important it was. I don't think anybody was booing that night, and that is appreciated by me. It meant something, and it was awesome. You know, Mike Beam pulled my name out of the hat, so to say, and came over to me on the backstretch where the cars were staged and well before practice and said, "Hey Doug, Mike Beam, I'm your celebrity crew chief for the night." Talked to him about his experience at GMS and what he was building there, and we just started talking about racing. And the coolest thing about working with Mike was he wanted to win that race that night, and he saw how bad I wanted to win that race that night. But I do know that one of my friends who was here said something to Mike in victory lane, you know, hey, you know, since he won this race, you should give him a truck ride. And he came over to me and he said, you know what, he's like, we're gonna make that truck ride happen. And I said, okay, it's exciting. I know we're all excited, but I'll believe it when I see it, in a sense like that. And he said, oh, it's happening, call me on Tuesday. And so I called him on Tuesday, and he had already had the plan in place to run Bristol, already gotten a go-ahead from Maury Gallagher and said, you know, this is what we're going to do. We're going to put you in the 24 truck at Bristol, and made my first start in the Camping World Truck Series as a result of winning SRX. There are people out there who are willing to take chances on short trackers and willing to offer opportunities when they're able to do so. There are more people that come to some of these short tracks now because of SRX. I had people who are totally not race fans tell me that they watched the race, that they want to come to Stafford, that they've come to Stafford since then. You know, it's not taking away from anything, it's just adding to what short track racing is every weekend. So that's kind of my favorite thing about it. It's got to be at the top, you know, and only because I'm getting older, or I am older now. And I think it means more, you know, that I'm 42 years old and this happened when I was 41 years old, and it led to the truck ride that for me personally, you know, I didn't really want my career to end before at least making one start in one of NASCAR's National Series. As a 16-year-old kid that started racing here in a late model and moving up to the pro stocks at the time and winning championships in those, and then getting, you know, my first SK ride, that was the biggest deal at the time. And then doing good enough in the SK to get noticed by Don King to go race on the Tour, that was a big deal at the time. And then the wins here in the Tour races, you know, the Sizzler, all sorts of stuff. The SRX deal was kind of like the icing on the cake, you know, the cherry on the sundae. It's like, you've done all this stuff here, this is my home track. It wouldn't have meant as much if it was at another track. This was a big deal for the Speedway, and to be included in it and then win it was, you know, a big deal for me too.
In the greatest race in the history of spring, the 50th anniversary, the win will go to Matt Hirschman.
The win and you're in thing for the SRX is just, you know, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and the short track racer being included in the SRX is what drew me as a viewer. I watched every one of them. Doug represented the modifieds well by winning.
You know, I'm thrilled for Matt Hirschman. I certainly think that right now there are probably 3 or 4 modified drivers, with Matt being at the top of the list, that I'm, you know, excited for his opportunity. I know what it's like and I know what it means, and, you know, it's awesome to see everybody who's getting a shot in the short track side of things. Peyton Sellers, Bubba Pollard, those guys are all so deserving of a chance to race against superstars. You know, this might not be Matt's home track, but he certainly knows how to get around most tracks, and I think he's going to be the favorite to win that night. So my money's on Matt. I got him by a straightaway. Don't fall on your ass if you win. I can think of a lot of messages for Matt. Matt doesn't need my help. You know, Matt's the master at saving tires. So ultimately, managing a race, saving tires, and being there at the end, there's nobody better in short track racing, in any form of short track racing right now, than Matt Hirschman to manage that. He's got a great shot to win this, and don't fall on your ass.